Hi, everyone. Welcome to Conejo Valley Visionaries, a weekly podcast spotlighting the people and stories behind your favorite Conejo Valley businesses. I'm your host, Christina Denstead. In today's episode, you'll hear from Sean and Amber of 507 in Thousand Oaks. When they were students at CLU, they realized the need for a community space or a cafe for people to come together. And in 2018, they opened their first location in Los Arboles. Today, we discuss their journey from inspiration to execution and what they've learned along the way. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Sean and Amber. And just as a reminder, if you love Conejo Valley Visionaries and enjoy supporting local businesses, please rate and review this episode and also share it with your friends. With that, please enjoy my conversation with Sean and Amber of 507. Today's episode is brought to you by ConejoValleyGiftGuide.com. Shop small, shop local, shop Conejo Valley this holiday season. Visit ConejoValleyGiftGuide.com to find something for everybody on your list, as well as exclusive offers from some of your favorite Conejo Valley businesses. Visit ConejoValleyGiftGuide.com and shop Conejo Valley this holiday season. Happy holidays. Hey, Amber and Sean, thank you so much for being on Conejo Valley Visionaries today.
Hi.
Good morning.
I am so thrilled, as I expressed before we started recording, as I've even shared on with the community, that we finally get you guys on the podcast. You were one of my first sort of targets when I launched a podcast earlier this year, and also one of the top requested stories to hear. And I know you were in the midst of launching and opening your second location at that time. Mm-hmm. So I think just as a reminder to folks, like following up with people, never take it. It's not a no. You just got to keep on going. I'm so happy that this worked out timing wise to get you guys on. So
thank you for having us.
Yes.
No, absolute pleasure. I cannot wait to hear all about your story. So, what we like to do is just go back to the beginning, and I'd love to hear from you guys. What did you want to be when you grew up? So maybe Amber, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, I wanted to be a high school math teacher. So I started going to school for that. And that's when I met him and things changed.
Got it. So you wanted, even as a kid, were you always interested in math or teaching, or how did that kind of come to be?
I loved teaching. I loved leading. And as I got into middle school and high school, I found that my strength was math, and I recognized a lot of my peers, like it was very different from them. And so for me, I was like, oh, like if it's different, then I should go after it. And I just love numbers. And as I've grown up, I learned I love just like more black and white. And so for me, I'm just like X plus Y equals Z. That's great. I love that.
Wow. And I love the idea and the awareness that you would have had at that age to realize that, like, because you seem more talented than maybe others, that you would want to focus on that. Very smart. Yeah. What about you, Sean?
For me, my time through high school and most of college was completely encompassed by basketball. So I always thought that sports marketing or something involving sports was in the cards. When I transferred to Cal Lutheran, kind of every person I knew who was living a life that a 19-year-old maybe wanted to live all worked at Amgen. And so then I thought, all right, maybe I want to be middle management. That sounds nice. And but
still does.
Yeah, still does actually. But as we both growing up in this area, and this is a little before we started dating, and going to Cal Lutheran and wanting to go out with friends and wanting to connect and have study groups and all these things, there just seemed to be something missing in this area. And growing up in Thousand Oaks, loved it so much, but there was sort of a pivot and an understanding of, okay, maybe one day I'll open up the space that I wish existed. So we would go down the hill to Camarillo, go to Rolling Pin Donuts, which was open until, 5 a.m. And that was sort of like the collegiate go-to. And so even some consideration came, well, what if I started a donut shop like Rolling Pin, but up in Thousand Oaks? And reached out to someone, and basically over the phone they said, "You don't want anything to do with this business, son." And then it was almost like mafia. It was great. But then so as a senior in Cal Lutheran, we had just started dating, and I was taking an entrepreneurial thought class. And shout out to Gerhard and the amazing business program at Cal Lu. And it was, you had to choose something. And so I said, all right, well, what about a smoothie shop? Because I love making smoothies at home. And just sort of pocketed that marketing plan, pocketed that business program. And we were off and running with our dating. And I started working at Marketing Maven in Camarillo in PR and was really enjoying it, but just had that something was picking up. And so that was kind of the third pivot that led to the start of where we are today.
That is so interesting. And yes, shout out Dr. Gerhard, Dean of the School of Management, who also had mentioned that 507 is his favorite coffee shop in the area. So what a cool story to know that that's where the idea sort of maybe planted itself in a way and that you've been able to bring it to full force. So you all grew up in the area. You saw this need for a cafe, or like, what did you see was needed?
Yeah, I also grew up here. I was born at Los Robles Hospital, born and raised Thousand Oaks. And so for me, there wasn't like, we didn't feel that community space anywhere, like Central Park and like Friends, or Central Park and Friends, whatever it's called. And so like, I was like, we need like one of those. And so for me, that was kind of our vision, is like, I want that safe meeting place that just felt homey.
Yeah. And it really didn't even start as a coffee shop. It started as smoothies and food. Mm-hmm. And then we started traveling because Amber loves to travel. And so we were in Denver, San Diego, San Francisco. And we just kept finding ourselves drinking really good coffee. And we were like, there's something here that maybe we really enjoyed. And this was even before, this was right as Ragamuffin was opening. And so they were a big first mover in this area as far as like really quality, like pour overs and espressos and things of that nature. So yeah, it started as a community space. And then we're like, okay, how do we want to gather people together? We had both worked in alcohol in some regards. We thought, do we want it to be beer, wine, food, coffee? And this was just sort of the most accessible and thing that we felt the most comfortable, like ethically as well, to like really dive into.
And to have like the built-in audience of Cal Lutheran right here. I mean, that's that's smart to like have that audience, and something that like obviously you could see as students needing, and then also probably other students desiring as well. When you were coming with this idea, did you do any market research with your fellow business students or at CLU, or did you just take the jump on your own?
Yeah, a lot of market research. We did a lot of pop-up events early on. So we would go to wineries and breweries and serve kind of the food side of it, and just start, like, our original logo was actually black, orange, and gray. Looked very Halloween-y. But it was something that through those conversations, then we started to pivot. I mean, that's kind of the story of, I think, our business is pivots, of listening to the community and staying true to where our core focus was. So it's always going to be like organic, local, fair wages, things of that nature. But from there, how can we meet the community where they are? Not necessarily we expect them to be or where we want them to be. And so at Cal Lutheran, I took market research with Ginger Zumaeta, who's wonderful, and that was sort of the start. That then we were able to use that in our fellow students and in just people we knew from the area.
I love that. And that is one of the tips that Gerhard shared, was that you've got to be open to pivoting and allowing the consumer to sort of help guide you. And it's great that you're able to use that as the space and to do pop-ups. So it sounds like the food came first. Did you, either of you, have any culinary background, or how are you coming up with what the food menu offering was?
Yeah, it was more of us just being foodies ourselves and going out. And like you mentioned, we love traveling. So we would just be traveling and just pick like what we like, what we don't like. And I know that's something that the owners of Moody Rooster was saying too. Like they both were like, okay, I like this and I don't like this. And that's when I was watching, I was like, that's exactly what we did. And it's like, there's certain things that I've had from the beginning that I was like, I don't want this and I do want this. And so, but for the food, no, we didn't have any food background. I worked in restaurants, but I was never on the food side of things. I was just the customer service side.
And one big thing for us too, where we couldn't necessarily draw from what already existed, is it was really important for us in a community aspect to be a space for everyone, for all the good people of Thousand Oaks. That was kind of our early market planning. And so when we were pitching potential investors, they say, all right, who are you looking for? College students? Are you looking for young people, rich people? Like, where are you at? And we're like, all the good people of Thousand Oaks. And they're like, that's never going to work. That's not a target market. And I was like,
yes, we can.
it's a target market and we've hit it. So
Yeah,
for us,
and like critical, it sounds like to your mission, like that's a bringing that energy into it is a good starting place.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So creating things that were gluten-free and vegetarian and vegan. So that was kind of the fun
options, not our options, menu, but lots of options.
Yeah. So like creating our own like plant-based pesto and creating our own like plant-based crepes there's a lot of misses along the way, but it was a lot of fun for us too early on in our relationship.
What year did you start with the pop-ups?
Early 2016.
Okay.
Yeah. 2016. Yeah.
And then when did you open your first location?
January of 2018.
Got it.
Yeah. So we signed the lease in August or September of 17. About 4 or 5 months of construction and off we went.
Did you go into it with a business plan at that point that had been sort of massaged to get you to a place where you can open a physical space?
Definitely. And I think the best thing for us was not being tied to it, of having this as sort of the vision. But then once we were in it, kind of just each day was its own fun adventure. And so Amber created early on with our wonderful opening team, she called them love letters. And so it's like every morning we're like, okay, this changed since yesterday. Okay, this changed since yesterday, as we're taking what our original vision was and then actually putting it into practice and creating alongside our teammates. And so we still have that to this day of like a love letter to the team every morning.
Daily, just what things that are changes. But now it's more so like the big changes that we leave on there for a few weeks so that they can see just what we're doing and what's going on and things like that.
How smart. That's as an effort to communicate and get people like on board with it. Very cool. With the business plan and your decision on the location, can you tell me a little bit about how you decided? So for those who might not know about 507, your first location is on Los Arboles, and that shopping center there. How did you decide to open your first location there?
That's a great question. We had visited a few other spaces. We even put offers and started the process traveling down that all around the city, everywhere from Newbury Park to Teal Boulevard. Pretty close to where we are now in our second location. But we loved that there was an outdoor patio space. It was actually larger than we were anticipating going into, because that was some of the feedback to our business plan was there's no coffee shops that are 2,000 square feet. You're next to 2 Starbucks and a Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf over here. It's going to be a build out. It's never been a restaurant before. And so there were a lot of things that maybe logically didn't make sense at the time. Whereas now it's turned into such a wonderful space and like a buzzing spot that the community has built. And we're honored to be a part of it.
Yeah. And it feels like it anchors that shopping center. Yeah. And you know that you can always go there. And I hadn't thought about the fact that there are other chain coffee shops in the area, but it does seem that 507 is always the one that's the most buzzy. Why do you think that is? Why do you think people are attracted to 507?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah. I think it's, and one of the things from the marketing and from the business perspective is from Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And it's the golden circle. And so there's the what that we do, which is coffee and light food, which 100 places do that. And a lot of places do it really, really well. A lot of places do it better than us. There's the how, which is for us, being a community space or being a restaurant in general. But the why is really why someone goes out of their way to connect with any sort of organization, whether it's a business or otherwise. And so for us, our why is community around creativity and clean foods. That's not necessarily 3 C's on purpose, but it works out. And so the fact that we have like the community and the creativity are kind of the heart of it, everything else flows out. And I think that's something that touches on a deeper level. And our sort of vision was creating a canvas for other people to shine, because we love art, we love creativity. We are not artists.
No, we are not.
I can play a few chords on the piano, which is nice. But to have these amazing local painters on our wall and these phenomenal baristas creating these coffee drinks and the music that's playing, it's just all of it working together in tandem.
I love that. And I think that comes across when you're there. So, and it's interesting that you both are an artist, but the creativity is such a big part of it. Where does the name come from?
You want to take it away?
No, that one's yours.
It's the 5 steps of the creative process. So inspiration, build up, resistance, overcoming, and then collaboration. 7 days a week, being a place for the community to come together. And it kind of paralleled our steps in opening the shop, where we had the inspiration of, why aren't there more community spaces in this area? And this is also, before Naughty Pine, before Tarantula Hill, before a lot of these spaces we kind of take for granted now. 5-10 years ago, they weren't around yet. And so for us, that was a big inspiration. The buildup was, okay, organic smoothies and coffee and late nights and open mic nights and these things that were a big part of our early stages. Resistance was the fact that we were 22 years old and had no money and no credit scores and all these things that are so important for starting a business and for acquiring funding. And so overcoming that of being able to find a co-signer for the loan and to find the right location and to find the right people to work with allowed us to collaborate with others. And so we've seen that play out with people writing screenplays, starting businesses. The list is endless, and so it just kind of parallels that.
Speaking of, you had mentioned before finding an investor. Is that the route you had to take to open, or what was sort of like your approach there?
Yeah, we did kind of a family and friends style, and that just allowed us to get the ball rolling along with our life savings, all 2 years of being adults at that point.
Yeah, me too.
But from that was able to get the ball rolling where we could then acquire or kind of have access to a debt, which was great.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know it's interesting to see different perspectives on how to get started. And with a restaurant space, it sounds like maybe coffee's kind of a low cost thing to get in, but the margins they're not big. So
Right.
I imagine you have to have a fair amount of, especially if you're building out the space. You mentioned that first location was not a restaurant. So what was that process like, converting it into one?
The good side of it is that it was kind of a blank canvas for us to put our mark on it. We are so grateful for the people we met early on. So James Christie from Christie Building, who's another great local guy. I had connections with him through Cal Lutheran because he used to do all of their projects. And so we were able to work with him on making it because a coffee shop is considered the same, like legally, as a regular restaurant. So all the same sinks, all the same refrigeration, all of electricity, the storage. Yeah. So it ends up costing pretty similar, and we would not have been able to do it on our own. So we're grateful for a good team.
That's great. Were you going off in terms of design and what it looked like based on your own desires? It sounds like maybe Amber, you were more of the money minded and more of the creative, or, did you both put input in terms of the look and feel of the space?
Yeah, I mean, for those that have been coming since day one, it looks so different now than it did 7 years ago. And at that point, we just had enough money to get open. And so the decor really took a while to come.
Like 4 tables in the whole space.
And they were all donated. And so it's really sweet when we think about it looking back. But I don't know. It's been really, really sweet to just have that opportunity and to take so much input from our staff and community members of just being like, oh, I know this person that does this, or I have, we met Mouse Rock, who's our our local artist that does art cups and also the murals in our shops now. And it's like just meeting these people along the way to help our space be what it is now.
Do you think that Thousand Oaks or the Conejo Valley has pivoted to be more open to these types of spaces? Like, where do you think, or was it, I'm just curious, because like you said, 8-10 years ago, there was nothing like you guys, which is hard to believe because this is a very nice area to live in, but no kind of like cafe or space that would offer that community, especially with the university. That's hard to believe. So what do you think has sort of spurred this change in the neighborhood?
Yeah, it's interesting to talk about this because I know just driving down the boulevard, you see that, is it like a museum or like an art
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, from the artist Risk, where it's got all the neon sign.
Like, you wouldn't have seen that here 10 years ago. And so it's been really sweet. But it's also been the first few years of us being open, people would be like, where am I? Like, I feel like I'm in New York, or I feel like I'm in Seattle, or like everyone would say a different space, which was fun, but everyone was just like, I'm not in Thousand Oaks. So I'm not sure what catapulted it, but I think we were a fun little part of it.
Yeah, I would attribute it to sort of a passing of the guard in some ways, where a vast majority of the people who are living in this area had been here since early 90s. And a big part of that was, I don't want to say like fleeing urban areas, but they were like, we've been here, we'll be here. It'd been 10, 15, 20 years, and there was a nice set of consistency and rhythm. And I think that rhythm has just picked up a little bit as their kids, like us, who have grown up in this area. We see all the great things that this area has always been, and also see, okay, how does it meet the 2020s? How does it meet the 2030s? And I think the majority of people, not even based on age, but just a lot of solid people are seeing that and are excited about it.
I agree. And it's been exciting to see that evolution. And I do think, 507, you guys were at the forefront of it, and to continue to see only more of those types of spaces popping up, which brings me to your second location. So was the plan always to open a second location, or how did that come about?
I can speak on that. Yeah. So we had always been open to it. And I mean, when you're making a business plan in college, you think, all right, I'll have 30 locations by year number 2, and just to have fun with it. But as we actually lived it out, COVID hit only 2 years into our business. And so we were just starting to hit our stride as a business when nobody was leaving their homes. And there's some funny social media videos we created of just walking around an empty parking lot during business hours.
Funny, but not.
Yeah, funny as I'm crying. Yeah. I'm not crying, you are. And so having traversed that was right at the end of, we were about 4 years into our 5-year lease. And so we had the opportunity to kind of take some reflection and say, okay, we made it through a crazy period. I'm sure we'll talk about this at some point, but we're running this business as a married couple, and it's so stressful on us. This Thousand Oaks getting more expensive. And so at the time, a lot of prayer and reflection, and sort of like, all right, God, like, do you have a further path for us? Or would you like us to possibly find new ownership? Would you like us to move out of this area? Wherever sort of that path is, we're open to it. Like, we yield our will to what the next steps are. And so we kind of did our due diligence. And so we looked across the country at all the places other people were moving to. We looked at our business numbers and said, okay, what's our next steps? And it just, every sign pointed to not only sticking around, but how to further invest in this area and further invest in the community. Mm-hmm. And not just on a big picture scale of, okay, let's open these, let's build a management team, but how do we impact more lives positively? And so that was our step moving forward. So it's all right, let's sign the lease and let's renovate this space. That's when our new tables and chairs came in. We upgraded and updated our menu. We brought in Mouse Rock, who has an amazing mural. We hired a director of operations, Kyle, who's just absolutely the best. And
Kyle Jory, yay.
Kyle Jory, big shout out.
Yes.
And so that was the biggest pivot of, okay, we're in this, let's do it.
That gives me chills. I love that sounds like you really did your due diligence during an extremely hard time to understand, is this the right place? And then you double down on it. You really went for it. And so at that point, is that when you were starting to look at new real estate locations? How long does that process take to find a second space?
Good question. We'd even been touring second locations a year after we opened our first one, just because people saw what was happening, other owners of different buildings, and we're just interested if we'd be a good fit. And so it's kind of like speed dating a little bit, where you go in and you say, all right, what are you hoping out of this space? Here's what we're hoping. We never wanted to, and there's a lot of pros to doing this. We have nothing but respect for businesses who have the same concept and recreate it. For us, we wanted to meet each neighborhood that we came in for exactly what that neighborhood needed. And so we were drawn to Thousand Oaks Boulevard and kind of that 101 corridor, because we would be driving that area oftentimes. We're like, we'd love just pop in, grab a shot of espresso, and then be on our way. And so when the landlord from that space reached out to us, we happily took the meeting. So yeah.
Great. And that opened earlier this year.
Yes. Yeah. Opened essentially New Year's.
And what's the concept? Explain the differences between the original 507 and the one on Teal Boulevard.
Let me do that.
Sure.
Yeah. So the original one was sort of based on like the French salons of like the French Revolution, not to sound pretentious, but a gathering space for people to be there, discuss ideas, discuss life, and sort of like a roots space. Whereas the new one was more inspired by Italian espresso bars, where you come in, there are seats, but there's also a standing bar, and you come in, you enjoy your latte or your cappuccino, and you say hi to the people you cross paths with, and then you're back on your way wherever it is.
And both have food menus, is that right?
Yes. So whereas the first one has all the sandwiches, toasts, crepes, smoothies, our new one just has a few fresh but prepped sandwiches and then pastries from Farm Shop, who's incredible.
That's great. I know. I noticed that you do work with some like local vendors too to bring in and highlight their
course.
Their different things.
Yeah, it's like that's like our biggest we love that, and it's just like there's so many. I noticed you had Heather on from Mix Up Baking a year ago, and so sweet. And so yeah, it's just like there's so many. And we actually recently just did a night market. Was that already last week?
Last week
did a night market and just had 8 different local vendors. And you just forget how many people just have their own little businesses in our area. And it's like, how can we be helpful for you? Like, come in, like, let's collab. I love it.
Yeah. Another form of creativity, right? Preparing food, running their small businesses. And was that your first time doing this market?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, okay. We put on a music festival
like
in 2019, which was wild and massive and big. It was at King Gillette Ranch out in Calabasas area, and it was wonderful and great, but it was such a big endeavor. We've been like, okay, let's do it. It was nice. Like, oh yeah, 8 vendors here in our shop. This is great.
Yes.
Fantastic. Would you recommend others to think about the Conejo Valley when it comes to starting a business? Do you recommend it?
I would say the same recommendations, probably based on wherever anyone is to start a business it's kind of, how to phrase it, not romanticized, but romanticized about the entrepreneurial lifestyle. However, when it comes down to the practice of it, you have to kind of grapple and wrestle internally. Does this thing need to exist? Like, am I adding a new widget that is maybe just 1% different than another widget? Or is this a new creation that my community will be better off from having existed? And it kind of goes a little parallel to doing what you love. It's a little bit less on the love side, more on like the integral nature of creating something. And so I think whether it's the Conejo Valley or whether it's Oklahoma, which is the opposite of the Conejo Valley, I guess, in my mind, is following that guideline, that rubric of what the why is for the business.
Yeah, and I think a brick and mortar is it's such a different, it's just such a different, you're in such a different ball game, ball field, ballpark. You're in some different ball something.
I like ball fields.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's just a whole other thing. And so it's like to have a whole space in Conejo Valley, like it's a lot. And so I think that's where the hesitation comes from. But like I have one of my best friends, she owns the Surgeon's Barbershop in Moore Park, and their space is small, but like we deal with the same issues, and it's nice to have a friend to just talk about that with. And but I think it's funny. Some people will be like, "Oh, like do you just do this for fun? Like do you have another job?" And it's just like, "Oh my goodness, like this is it.
Yeah,
this is all I can handle." I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can imagine the misunderstanding of what startup life looks like or running your own business. I've talked about that with a couple other business owners, this idea of like, you get to not report to other people. However, you end up doubling down on how many hours you work and what the responsibilities that come with running your own business are. And yes, I imagine a physical space given rent and all of that. However, since you both are from here originally, do you still feel like you're contributing to the community that you loved at your, when you decided to start it here?
Definitely. I think what's been so cool is that having been here for 2 decades before we opened the business, we felt like we were a part of the community. However, these last 6, 7 years has just been like this with the Conejo Valley. And so, contributing the same way that I think everyone who's a part of the community is contributing, and like we're kind of like an organism of some nature where we're all part of it. And so that's been so cool to feel part of something bigger in that way.
And it sounds like, I think you mentioned, that somebody wrote a screenplay from from your space, like maybe providing that space where even more incredible things can be kind of grown, or maybe the seed planted in this area is really nice.
Yeah.
What has surprised you the most about running your own business?
I feel like it's all been a surprise.
Yeah.
I think we were really so young when we started. It's like, at least I personally, I didn't have any entrepreneurs. And I'm so tired. I'm so sorry. Entrepreneurs in my family. And so for me, I've always just been around those that work 8 to 5. And so doing this, everything was a surprise for me. And it's more about, like we've talked about, like pivoting and just taking the next step that you feel is necessary in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing that's been most surprising but exciting has been all the people that we kind of joined together with, either on parallel paths or integrated. We've had, probably 200 teammates that have worked with us at the shop itself. We've had dozens of painters and artists and musicians. And so to be creating it together, and we sort of say, like, we all have a job here at the shop. Like, ours is just making sure the business keeps running. And so to be like working with other people to create this has been less of the Herculean effort that maybe it's portrayed of the business owner versus the world. Like, no, it's part of the world and we're building it together.
What are you most proud of?
I'm probably most proud of our marriage. In that it has, and I know you've talked with a number of couples kind of touching on these points of, life is already hard and marriage has its challenges, especially being like we were pretty young when we got engaged, and to be building this business and in the early days working 100+ hour weeks regularly together on something of this sort of magnitude, and for us to then have gone through it and to now be stronger than ever and to have this foundation. I'm really proud of it and really excited by it.
I love that answer.
Good luck topping that.
Yeah, I'm like,
yes.
You're like, my latte art?
I'll take that answer too, but it is, so yes, as I mentioned, we've had a couple other couples on the podcast this season. And when I polled the Conejo Valley Visionaries audience on Instagram, would they open a business with their partner? The majority said no. And I am curious, I appreciate your transparency and the vulnerability of saying, that it is challenging, because it's true. Relationships can be hard no matter what. Opening a business, dealing with some of the strains, it sounds like in those first early years, like, has there been something that has worked to figure this out? Like each of you taking a different role in the business, or is there something that makes it work in your opinion?
Yeah, for sure. We have a couple, they own quite a few coffee shops in Ogden, Utah. And we approached them and we're like, we're not married yet, but we're planning on it. And we're planning on this business. Like, what do you do? And they were like, delegate, like have separate roles, like, and then trust each other to handle those. And that's exactly what we did in the beginning. It's like, okay, you're going to be me. I'll be in charge of scheduling and payroll and kind of staff oriented. Sean, you're kind of be in charge of the rest. And that seems to be still working out really, really well. So
that's great. And smart to get other inputs at those early stages from people in a similar situation. What has been the biggest challenge?
In general, or on like as a couple? Whatever I want.
However you take it, yes. As it relates, I suppose, to 507, but generally speaking, yeah.
I think making that switch from leaving work and entering our home and then being like, I have so much to talk to you about, but I don't want to stress you out. And then, but I think that I'm at a place now where that's gotten much better, where now we have like weekly marriage meetings and we have weekly work meetings. That way we don't feel like, oh, I need to talk about this, but I don't want him to get stressed. And so we prioritize our weekly meetings to make sure that we're on the same page and our communication is at 100. Because like we mentioned, when you're 22, your communication isn't at 100, even if you think you're right all the time.
The good thing is that I was.
No, I was. And so so it's been really nice being able to have that and then come into home. And we talk to our staff all the time and about it, because I'll be like, remember, we don't talk about this at home. So if there's something you need me to tell him, like, let me know. And so they've been so great, and they are so understanding of this dynamic too.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I agree. I think that adding, because in the early days we didn't prioritize this, which makes sense because of the workload, but having other things going on in our life where it's like, we are not 507. We are Sean and Amber, and we run 507, but we also are active in our church, and we also like to run and exercise and read books and do all these things. And so reintroducing those things into our life has been great on the personal side, but also on the marriage side, where now we have all those other things to talk about that we love talking about with each other.
Speaking of running, tell me about the Turkey Day Dash. We didn't talk about that. It seems like that was an important beginning to the start of 507, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, so we really enjoyed doing the Turkey Day Dash, started by the YMCA in the early 2000s. Funnily enough, Amber always said, I'll never be one of those people who runs races early in the morning on holidays. And yet our first year dating,
he found that tweet, like, I did that like 15 years ago, or tweeted that. And then he found that and I was like, oops, now we're running one.
Yeah. And so it was just a fun part of our relationship, and seeing the community come together on a day of gratitude around health and community is like, this is what we're all about. And then when COVID hit and the YMCA sort of had to prioritize which programs they were able to continue, and the Turkey Day Dash, a one-time-a-year thing, required some staff effort, and so they prioritized other things. Totally reasonable. When we brought on Kyle Jory onto our team, one of our big priorities was, let's reach out to the YMCA and see if we can assist in bringing this back. And it kind of came up to, it can come back, but 507, it's yours. Go make it happen. And so it still is a charitable event, and so the funds go to the YMCA of Southeast Ventura, to the Ventura Boy Scouts, and then to our local Kiwanis Club. And so all youth-based organizations, which is really just like reinvesting into the community. And so it was really fun last year. Crazy, hectic, but fun. And so now this is our second year next week on Thanksgiving, and we're expecting over 2,000 people, close to 3,000, and it'll have coffee there, and it's going to be fun.
Where just personally, I'm curious, where does it start?
Oh yeah, so full circle starts at Cal Lutheran, and it's so cool. You have the Thousand Oaks, police are going to be guarding the streets, and we run Avenida de los Arboles to Lynn, up Olson, so it finishes like up that hill. And then it comes back to the finish line, and we'll have like music and art and a bunch of local booths and vendors and stuff like that. And then as soon as you're there, go cook that turkey. We'll see you later.
Sounds like a lot of fun. I love this. Yeah. What is your vision for the future of 507?
That's a good question.
We never know. Yeah. I feel like we always have like our foot in something, and then it's always like, okay, what's actually going to catch in a way? And like the Turkey Day Dash was so random. Like 507, why are you doing that? It's like, selfishly, we just wanted it back. We knew that we kind of had the platform to take it on.
Right.
So that was a random thing that I couldn't have predicted a few years ago. But it just kind of fell into our lap, and we had that decision, and we had the means, and sort of like, let's do it. I kind of feel like that's how we are all the time. We're always looking at other places. We always, so I don't know what the future, but we're here to stay. I know that.
Yeah, that's it. Is like, what does the next few weeks look like?
Yeah.
All right, let's do those the best of our ability, and then let's set the stage so that down the road, if the right thing comes to fruition, like Thousand Oaks Boulevard location, like the Turkey Day Dash, then we're ready to act. I think that's the big step. So sorry for the sort of nondescript answer, but
I'll take it. Although in your business plan, you said 30 locations in that second year. So here's for hoping.
We're running behind. Sorry to our investors. Where's that ROI?
Oh my goodness. Okay, I've got 3 rapid fire questions for you.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite item on the menu?
Mine is, so we started during COVID. This is not a rapid fire answer. We started roasting our own coffee. And so we partner with Century Coffee out in Ventura because they're organic certified. So a great partner. And we just renovated our house roast blend. And so it's a Brazil, Guatemalan, organic. And so I usually do that straight or with a little bit of like local honey in there.
Espresso with honey?
Yeah.
Mine is probably our White Christmas that we're about to come out with because it's my favorite seasonal menu that we have. And it's a white chocolate vanilla cinnamon latte with powdered sugar on top. And at our Arbalest location, definitely avocado toast with pesto, goat cheese, and poached eggs.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go grab that right now. That sounds incredible. Okay, what is your favorite thing to do in the Conejo Valley?
Favorite thing to do in the Conejo Valley?
That's such a sweet question. I love that. Hiking and going out to restaurants.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite hike?
What's that?
Do you have a favorite hike?
I mean, it has to be Wildwood, right? I have to. I'm a native. I feel like I have to say that.
Yeah. I think we've had a number of like days that involved a hike and then going to like Moody Rooster and grabbing some food. And so, yeah, I one of the things that I love about this area is that it seems like you're always 5 minutes away from a gorgeous hiking spot or gorgeous trail. And so like Sapwe over by our Arbalest space across from Los Cerritos Middle School, we used to live over in the apartments over there. And so it was almost a daily, just like a walk or a jog through there.
It's so beautiful. And I embarrassingly did not realize that the bottom of Sapwe, like near the middle school, is the same as when you go on the other side of Westlake Boulevard.
Yeah.
It's so incredible. It's like, oh, that's up there. Interesting. It's so pretty. Okay, and in closing, can you each of you provide one piece of advice you'd give to first-time entrepreneurs?
I'd probably reiterate, I would double down on make sure it's something that needs to exist. And then once you have the eyes on what it is and why it is that it needs to be created, being ready to lay it kind of all on the line to get after that and to put in that work for it. And then to surround yourself with people who can either support either you in it or support that dream as well.
That's good. I like that. For me, I would say it's like strengthening yourself. For us, I felt like we really did have the strength of discernment in the beginning of like, we heard so many, like, it's never going to work. No one's going to come. You're right next to Starbucks. Like, good luck. And then, but like, I'm so glad we didn't listen to that. So being able to discern and then also just being able to, strengthen yourself, whether that means working out or therapy, whatever that is for you, just like making sure like you are good by yourself so that you're able to give to others. Because so much of what we do, and we have a good amount of employees, but it's like, I want to make sure, like, I need to make sure they're okay. And if I can't do that, if I'm breaking down. And so.
Right.
Fantastic. Excellent advice. Thank you so much for this conversation. It sounds like an incredible journey, and to do it both together and continue to grow this community, it means a lot. So thank you both for all that you do for the Conejo Valley. And thank you for joining me today.
Christina, thank you for this time. 10 out of 10.
Absolutely. Thank you. Make sure to subscribe to Conejo Valley Visionaries wherever you listen to podcasts so that you never miss an episode. And follow us at Conejo Valley Visionaries on Instagram. If you want to share your visionary story on the podcast, send us a DM. We are always open to guest nominations. This episode was produced by Christina Denstead and Justin K. Sloan. Conejo Valley Visionaries is edited by Justin K. Sloan and J. Sloan Productions.